February 22nd.
Music has always been my passion, and that passion now is focused on my bassoon.
The arts are really important to me. I spent most of my life teaching in the arts.
So we've decided to include our PBS station in our will.
Consider including New England Public Media in your future plans. Visit nepm.org for more information.
It's such a good feeling to know that we will have an impact on future people's relationships to arts.
You're watching New England Public Media, WGBY Springfield.
The Black church has been the root of the most celebrated aspects of Black culture. The role of music in the Black church is everything.
It's something about those songs that brings joy.
The Black Church.
The Black Church, February 16th on NEPM.
Coming up, stories we're connecting you with tonight. The latest on the COVID-19 vaccination rollout in Massachusetts.
There are still people getting vaccinated under phase 1, but we've moved on to phase 2, adults 75 years and older.
The Agawam Lions Club lends a hand to ensure that students have what they need to learn at home.
Put a form out there, sent emails to principals and teachers just saying, hey, we're doing this. 12 hours later, we had 150 requests for desks.
And how local businesses are faring during the winter months of the pandemic.
People are working from home, so they're not out in those usual areas, and so the foot traffic is down significantly at any of those businesses that we think of as Main Street businesses.
Details on those stories and more up next on Connecting Point.
Support for Connecting Point is provided by our contributing viewers.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us for Connecting Point. I'm 𝙬𝙗𝙗𝑆. This week, Massachusetts began the second phase of its COVID-19 vaccination rollout, with roughly 450,000 residents ages 75 and older now eligible to receive a vaccination. But the vaccination process has been plagued with difficulties nationwide, including here in Massachusetts, which ranks 34th nationally in per capita vaccinations, as reported on Tuesday by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. To find out what you need to know about the state's vaccination rollout, I spoke with Dr. Andrew Arenstein, the Chief Physician Executive and Incident Commander for COVID-19 at Baystate Health.
We are into early phase 2 of 3 phases. Now, recall phase 1 was had to do largely with healthcare workers, and that's broadly defined people in the general field of healthcare, as well as residents and staff of various long-term care facilities and various types of nursing homes and assisted living facilities. That was phase 1. That there are still people getting vaccinated under phase 1, but we've moved on to phase 2, and the first early stage of phase 2 started with those adults 75 years and older. So it was really an age-based criteria, and that started on February 1st.
It will be about a year in March since we were first advised to quarantine, practice social distancing, and here we are a year later already distributing vaccines. This rapid pace is unlike any other. How was this vaccine able to be created and released so quickly?
There was investigation more than 15 years ago. In 2003, 2004, there was an outbreak, an epidemic, as you recall, of SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, which is a genetically related virus to the virus that causes COVID-19. It was new at the time, 15 plus years ago, and a lot of work was done at that point scientifically to develop a vaccine. Now that infection sort of disappeared from the face of the earth, but other coronaviruses have since appeared, and this is one of them. And so the scientific community had some understanding of the virus. They're genetically related, so some of the basic work had already been done. Additionally, we've had 40 years of dealing with HIV. Now, HIV is a completely unrelated virus, completely unrelated disease, but the science that has moved forward related to the study of HIV has helped other fields of science as well. So that's helped. The other two things that have helped is there has been a worldwide focus on COVID over the last year. What's happened is scientists from around the world have turned their attention and focused their attention on this one infection and this one disease, which has resulted in some spectacular advances. And then finally, governments and organizations have poured funding dollars into the scientific study of this infection, including pharmaceutical companies, and that has really helped propel science forward fast to get us to the point where we now have this achievement.
And speaking of science, this vaccine is an mRNA vaccine. Can you talk about the science behind this inoculation and how it's different from the traditional vaccine that we're used to?
These are based on this novel mRNA platform. And the messenger RNA basically is a synthetic genetic sequence of the virus. So it's not the virus. It is not even the actual virus and cannot cause anyone to get sick with the virus. But it's just a piece of genetic material that's synthesized, that's made in laboratory, that looks just like the genetic material from the virus. That when it's injected into the human body, it instructs human cells to make certain proteins. That's what messenger RNA does for us under normal conditions. This time, the proteins it's having our bodies create are proteins that stud the surface of the coronavirus, the spike protein. And when our body produces that protein in response to the vaccine, our body also sees it as a foreign substance and produces antibody against that protein. Those antibodies are what protects us like an invisible shield against the actual virus infection and disease caused by the virus. So it prevents viral replication because the virus, those antibodies stick to the viral proteins as they try to get in our cell and prevent it. So it's almost like giving the blueprints for a house. You know, when a contractor gives you blueprints, this is giving our body the blueprints to make these proteins, to produce these antibodies against them, which protect us against the virus. That messenger RNA quickly goes away when it's injected into the body. It doesn't last for long. It doesn't cause any ill effects, but it does allow our body to create this immune response, which appears to protect at very high levels, upwards of 95% against disease and severe disease caused by the virus. We don't know for sure yet whether it protects against all asymptomatic infections, which is why everyone still is hearing that it's really important to wear masks, physical social distance, stay home with symptoms, all that, wash your hands frequently, all those public health recommendations we still need to follow until we're out of the woods, till enough vaccine has gotten into enough people that we have herd immunity and we're out of the woods. That's still several months away, maybe 6 or more months away.
There's been a lot of debate and discussion around this vaccine and whether it is safe or not. What are some of the misconceptions you've heard, and can you clarify them for anyone who has concerns?
What we've seen, at least in the two big clinical studies of the messenger RNA vaccines that resulted in the emergency authorization, that over 30,000 people were vaccinated in total. And of those people, there were essentially no serious adverse events, meaning or very few, very minimal adverse events out of 30,000. And now 28 million Americans, as of yesterday, have received at least one dose of these vaccines, and about 7 million have received 2 doses and fully vaccinated. It's a small percentage, but it's a lot of people nonetheless. And there have been very, very few reported severe side effects. Now, the second dose may be a little bit more side effects than the first, and the side effects tend to occur more often in those who are younger as opposed to those who are older. And that's probably related to sort of an exuberant immune response. You know, younger people have a more active immune system, so their responses are more, they have a more stimulated immune system. That's one of the benefits of being young. And when I say young, in the studies, they were really those under 55. As of what we know now, there are no serious side effects, but again, this vaccine has only been used even in the clinical trials since the fall. So, we're talking about 6 months, even in the folks who were part of the initial studies. That's not a long time, but it is long enough to see any immediate or short-term serious side effects, and there were very few seen.
State Representative Lindsay Sabadosa spoke with our Ray Herschel recently about the state's vaccine rollout and offered her perspective on it.
Our local Board of Health right now has the capacity to inoculate up to 1,200 people a week. And yet they were told a few days ago they were only going to get 100 doses. So that really means the state is not relying on those infrastructures that are there.
And you can find more of Ray's interview with Representative Sabadosa in a digital extra available online right now at nepm.org/connectingpoint. The topic of vaccines can be controversial, with some citing religious beliefs or medical exemptions as reasons to not be vaccinated. On January 15th, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health rescinded a mandate that would have required all children over the age of 6 months attending Massachusetts childcare, preschool, kindergarten, K-12, or college to get the flu vaccine by February 28th. The mandate had drawn protests by some who argued it was a government overreach and take issue with bills aimed at restricting or ending exemptions for vaccinations. Supporters of those exemptions in the state of Connecticut have concerns as lawmakers in the state legislature discuss reintroducing a bill that would eliminate religious exemptions for vaccinations. Connecting Point's Brian Sullivan visited the Capitol building in Hartford on January 6th as opponents to the measure showed up to voice their concerns.
Placards like these are usually the types one might expect to see at a rally for women's reproductive rights. But in this case, it's about another hot-button issue that affects children. It was in February of 2020 that the Connecticut State Legislature rolled out a proposed bill to remove the state's religious exemption to mandatory vaccinations for school-aged children. COVID-19 put those plans on hold. But as the new session gets underway, lawmakers plan to revisit the measure. And as those lawmakers were being sworn in on January 6, 2021, several groups representing religious freedoms and personal liberties gathered at the Capitol building in Hartford to make their voices of opposition heard.
What's at threat right now is the ability for people to opt out based on their religious creed, and it's protected by all kinds of laws and the Constitution that we do not have to identify with any organized religion to express our faith for any reason. The government is asking people to either identify with an organized religion or completely discounting their beliefs in order to obtain a free public education guaranteed to them by the Connecticut Constitution.
According to some people that I asked, the numbers were down from the previous year, and that may have had to do with the frigid temperatures. But overall, there were still a couple hundred in attendance on this cold January morning. As a first-timer, it was interesting for me to see exactly who made up this crowd.
We have people from all walks of life who really just support medical and religious freedom, really the freedom to choose and and individual rights more than anything else.
I am here because we have the right to choose what is good for our body. It is not about religion or anything else. It's about freedom. It's about being free to be American.
We're concerned about the future for our children. We feel that the government is really getting into our lives in a way that we don't agree with and we're not comfortable with. It's my child, his body, my choice for his body.
The crowd moved back and forth between the front and the back of the Capitol building in what felt like a bit of a game of cat and mouse between the elected officials and the people trying to get their attention. On the plus side, it did keep everyone moving on this cold morning, and just maybe the rally-goers had their voices heard.
Rallies like this one here today at the Capitol building behind me are largely symbolic, but with today being the same day that the new legislature gets sworn in, many of the constituents in attendance feel that today's the only day that their lawmakers will actually listen to them.
The festivities eventually moved down the road to the public square in front of the Legislative Office building. Here, there were several speakers on hand boosting the spirits of those in attendance. The long-term goal of these gatherings is to not only hold the lawmakers accountable, but to get more people involved. This crowd in particular was mostly women, although there were some men there. But this one attendee would have liked seeing more men at this event and a lot more at future events as they move forward.
Men should be rising up to the occasion. A lot more church pastors should be here today. Men should just be here in general, speaking on the behalf of their family.
As lawmakers in Washington debate a new possible COVID-19 relief package, we take a look at the state of the economy here in Western New England. During the summer months, many businesses with capacity restrictions benefited from having access to the outdoors. But with the change of seasons bringing frigid temperatures and snow, those options are now limited or non-existent. I spoke with Rick Sullivan, president of the Economic Development Council of Western Massachusetts, to find out how local businesses are faring during the winter.
Some of our businesses have done, actually fairly well during this period of time. So we are starting to see, significant demand. If you're in the manufacturing sectors, those are doing, quite well. Some of them have pivoted, kind of the term of the day, if you will, to maybe go into some other production lines if they can get longer term contracts for things like PPE. But if you are in the restaurant industry or anything that is a venue, travel, tourism related, you are still struggling and are going to continue to struggle to some degree until we really are out of the COVID restrictions and the gathering restrictions. And obviously, restaurants, while they might have got a bit of a reprieve during the summer and early fall, Massachusetts does not really lend itself to outdoor dining experiences.
As you just mentioned, the restaurant industry has been hardest hit by all of what's happening with COVID, and it's garnered a lot of much deserved attention. But what businesses are also struggling that we haven't really been hearing about, but also need some attention and light shined on them?
Anything that is consumer related, that is kind of impulse buying to some degree, or relies on any kind of foot traffic, because if you're in Springfield or any of the communities, people are working from home, so they're not out in those usual areas, and so the foot traffic is down significantly at any of those kind of smaller consumer areas, kind of the businesses that we think of as Main Street businesses.
It was announced in early January that the Paycheck Protection Program, or PPP, would reopen for new borrowers. What should businesses be aware of with this latest round, and what other resources are available?
They certainly, first and foremost, need to be working with their financial advisors and in most cases, their local banks that they do business with, and decide, if applying for and getting a PPP makes sense for them. But it's a good thing that the PPP program has reopened. The state does have some other grant programs that are out there that are COVID relief. I think the cities that are entitlement communities have leveraged their community development block grants, which is a federal program, and made it available to mostly Main Street type businesses, again, the mom and pops, to come in with some grants to be able to help them, weather this storm and provide some much needed cash flow to be able to keep people employed and to pay the bills. And there's now a grant program out there for cities, which does involve working with regional economic development organizations to kind of get together to put together employment programs or other programs that are going to be able to get people, back to work, get the businesses back open, and, hopefully allow us to really, come out of the COVID restrictions with an economy that's vibrant.
With the start of the new year, the topic of vaccinations has been at the forefront of many conversations surrounding the pandemic and COVID-19. Some people are on board. Some people want to decline the vaccination. Is the future of our economy dependent on vaccinations and the amount of people who receive it?
I do think that it is. I don't think people are going to feel safe until obviously the numbers are down significantly. I do think that there's a direct correlation between the availability and the deployment of the vaccine. I do think that there has been significant frustration in terms of the rollout and the availability of the vaccine and when people are going to be able to get it. And it has taken longer than people have thought it should take. it's up to government to get it out and get it dispersed and get it into people's arms, as they say. I do think that there's a direct correlation between that and people feeling safe and us being able to turn the corner to a more vibrant economy.
Back in the summer when we last spoke with you, you were feeling optimistic about the long-term prognosis of our local economy. Now, almost 6 months later, are you still feeling optimistic about the future of our economy here in Western Mass?
I am. I can tell you, I think if you look at the real estate market in terms of residentially, it is still a seller's market. We certainly need some additional inventory. Those individuals that are either going to be working remotely or from home, or even some of the hybrids, they're going to have a choice as to where they choose to live. And so as long as we have the infrastructure in terms of the communication and the Wi-Fi and the broadband, Western Mass has a compelling case to make for individuals that may need to have access into Boston or New York, but they can live and experience a lower cost of living and a great quality of life here in Western Massachusetts. I also think that as companies have gone through the pandemic and they've looked at their supply chains, particularly some of their foreign suppliers, they see that supply chain as being unreliable, or at least not as reliable as they want. And, we have some extremely talented businesses out here in Western Mass, particularly when you're talking precision manufacturing. And there's an ability for these companies to be able to enter some supply chains of companies that they currently are not in. And I can tell you just anecdotally, one of the services that the EDC does provide is site selection searches. And, our numbers are up, and the number of I'll say active deals that we have is higher now than it would have been even 2 years ago. So I am optimistic. I do think we've got a lot of opportunities, and I think in some respects, Western Massachusetts' best days may very well be in front of us as we come out of COVID.
With many students learning remotely, finding an adequate learning space at home has been a challenge. Some kids are setting up on kitchen tables or countertops, while others are sitting on their beds, logging into virtual classrooms, and trying to make the best of a less than ideal situation. The Agawam Lions Club recognized the issues that many kids were having and started the no-cost student desk program to benefit Agawam students. Club members have been making desks in their garages since late last year and getting them into the homes of kids who need them. And producer Dave Frazier brings us the story.
Okay, you're all set. You're welcome. Have a nice day.
On a cold, blustery January weekend, Dick Lanier and his fellow Agawam Lions Club members distributed free desks to town residents.
Have a good day.
What started as a simple campaign took off like wildfire once the volunteer service organization put the word out that they were building desks for any Agawam student who needed one.
We had set out to build maybe 20. We'd go so far as to make 40. Put a form out there, sent emails to principals and teachers just saying, hey, we're doing this. 12 hours later, we had 150 requests for desks.
Realizing there was a real need for a flat work surface in people's homes, the club members got to work, cutting, gluing, and nailing small wooden desks.
This is very much a community activity. Many members of our Lions Club are involved, as well as members of the community making and then distributing. And those folks who can't lay hands on the project, they're donating money.
The Lions Club received help from the Home Depot in the form of 2x4s and sheets of plywood, as well as funds to help build 150 more desks.
I have a daughter who's right now homeschooling, and I know what it's like, to either sit down on a couch or in their rooms, and sometimes they don't have a desk and they don't have a place to put their supplies. And I think for all of those who have to learn from home, and a lot of the schools having to do that, I think this kind of gives the kids a place to put their belongings, and it kind of attaches them to a school purpose.
The club, which has been around since 1944, settled on a simple design of a top, 2 sides, and a back.
There you have a desk.
There is a storage area underneath, and each desk is sanded and receives 2 coats of polyurethane. Lions Club Secretary Dick Lanier has made over 80 desks in his garage in Feeding Hills. He says the tough part is hearing the stories from those in need.
The absolute biggest impact is the feedback we're getting from school staff and parents. They're gut-wrenching. When you feel like knocking off for the night, you just keep going because you know somebody needs it.
Back at the pickup site at Agawam High School, it was a steady stream of cars with people who had signed up to receive a desk.
First name in school.
We're keeping this super simple. There's no economic need or determination. There's no household limit. Does not matter who requests your desk. We're simply going to get a desk in the hands of students.
Melissa Kulak picked up a couple of desks for her 3 children and 2 stepchildren, all learning remotely at home.
It was great to see them doing this and get free spaces for them to do their work properly and not at the kitchen table.
It's phenomenal, especially with a child of special needs. He really needs a place to sit and focus, and I thought this was perfect.
You guys take care. As gratifying as this project has been for the Lions Club, it also reminded them of how tough this pandemic has been and how families everywhere are struggling. But if a simple gesture like providing a desk for those who need one can make a difference, they are happy to be of service.
I think we want the students to know the message here is, you know, we're giving you this desk, we're giving you a tool in your toolkit, and we're going to try to positively influence the learning process as much as we possibly can. We'd love to take the pandemic away, but I can't do that. To the extent that I can give you something tangible and a message that goes along with that, we're going to do that.
That does it for Connecting Point for February 5th, 2021. Remember, you can always find the stories that you saw tonight, as well as exclusive features, digital-only content, and more online anytime at nepm.org/connectingpoint. And please join us again next Friday night at 6, right here on New England Public Media, for more stories of the people, places, and ideas that matter most to Western New England. I'm 𝙀𝙀𝙬𝙀. Be safe and have a good night.
Support for Connecting Point is provided by our contributing viewers.
On American Experience.
Marian Anderson challenged people's ideas of what the souls of Black folk looked and sounded like.
She is willing to show up because she is not going to accept racial oppression.